Have you ever cracked open a pistachio shell with your fingers, noticed how easily it pops along a single seam, and wondered why this particular nut splits open so much more readily than an almond or a walnut? It is not actually a nut in the strict sense at all, and the reason it cracks so easily traces back to something genuinely unusual happening on the tree, long before it ever reaches your hand. A pistachio is, botanically speaking, a drupe, the same category of fruit that includes peaches, cherries, and plums. A drupe consists of an outer, fleshy layer surrounding a hard shell, which itself protects a single seed inside. What you are actually eating when you eat a pistachio is the seed from inside a stone fruit after the fleshy outer layer has been removed during processing, not a nut in the formal botanical sense that term implies for something like a hazelnut or a chestnut. Almonds belong to this same drupe family. The kitchen category of nut is a culinary convenience, not a biological classification, and pistachios sit firmly on the fruit side of that distinction. But here's the surprising truth. As a pistachio ripens on the tree, the shell inside the fruit splits open along a natural seam entirely on its own before any human intervention occurs. And this happens with enough physical force that orchards report being able to hear an audible popping or cracking sound during the height of the ripening season. The shell doesn't need to be cracked open by processing equipment. It cracks itself. This self-splitting happens because the seed inside continues growing and absorbing moisture as the fruit ripens, while the shell surrounding it dries and hardens at the same time. The growing seed pushes outward against a shell that is simultaneously becoming more rigid and less able to flex, and at a certain point in ripening, the internal pressure exceeds what the drying shell can withstand, and it splits cleanly along its weakest structural line. This is also why a pistachio shell typically opens along one predictable seam rather than shattering randomly, the way a walnut shell does when struck with force from outside. Think of it like a seed pod on certain wildflowers that dries out and snaps open on a dry afternoon, flinging its contents outward without any external trigger at all. The pistachio works on a milder version of the same principle, splitting from internal pressure rather than waiting for an outside force to break it open. So, if pistachios split themselves open naturally, why do commercially sold pistachios still sometimes arrive with shells tightly closed? The answer, as is often the case in agricultural production, comes down to timing and harvest conditions rather than any difference in the nut itself. Pistachios harvested slightly before full ripeness, due to weather conditions, pest pressure, or simply the scheduling demands of harvesting an entire orchard at once, have not yet completed the natural splitting process. And these unsplit shells require mechanical cracking before sale. Fully ripened pistachios that split naturally on the tree are typically considered higher quality and often command a price premium specifically because the self-splitting indicates the nut reached full maturity under ideal growing conditions before harvest. So, the next time you crack open a pistachio shell along its single clean seam, you will know you are not opening a nut in any strict sense. You are finishing a process the fruit had already mostly completed by itself, on the tree, under nothing more than its own internal pressure and the patience of an entire growing season.